We are in the middle of Braving the Wilderness, our theme by this book, wonderful book, Brené Brown, one of my personal favorites. And we're in the depths of the wild now, aren't we all? The wilderness, as she calls it. And we've been exploring the wilderness not as a physical place, although that's fun too. Anyone else like to go hiking in the wilderness? Maybe we'll get a little group going this summer at some point. But we are looking at that spiritual terrain, the wilderness within. That place where true belonging is born, not from fitting in, but from being deeply rooted in who we really are. So I want to speak today about the heart of this journey, how we build trust with ourselves and others, and how we live with integrity and develop that strong back, yet soft front and wild heart. So I'm going to share a quote from the reading last week and just want to presence this again because there was a bit of a misquote because this comes from her book, but it wasn't actually Brené who wrote it. The quote was from Buddhist monk Joan Halifax. So I wanted to also do a little like editorial, correction to the editor thing about our reading last week is from Joan Halifax. So she says, all too often our so-called strength comes from fear, not love. Instead of having a strong back, many of us have a defended front, shielding a weak spine. In other words, we walk around brittle and defensive, trying to conceal our lack of confidence. If we strengthen our backs, metaphorically speaking, and develop a spine that is flexible but sturdy, then we can risk having a front that is soft and open. Beautiful words. And as those of you who may be familiar with Brené's work, you know that vulnerability is one of her key teachings. So let's start with this idea of a strong back. This is the part of us that stands tall in the face of discomfort, that stands tall, rooted, anchored in who we are, in the face of disappointment or disapproval. It's the part that says, I know who I am, and I will not betray myself in order to belong to a group that requires my silence or me masking or pretending to be something that I'm not. This kind of strength doesn't show up overnight, right? It's a spiritual muscle that we build. We strengthen this every time we speak our truth with love, with compassion, with integrity. Every time we set a clear, loving boundary and we stick with it. Every time we say yes to our inner knowing and no to people pleasing. So many of us have been conditioned that saying no to someone is bad. Anyone else have this discomfort with saying no sometimes? I know for me, I feel like I have to give a whole dissertation on why I'm saying no. So this comes from that idea that we have to people please or we have to explain ourselves for some reason so that people won't think that we are bad. Yet I love this idea, and I'm still working on it, that no is a complete sentence. Ooh, that for me is standing and braving the wilderness, just saying no when someone asks something. People pleasing and perfectionism are not virtues. They are, as Brené says, ways that we hustle for our worthiness. Whew, that hit me, right? You don't have to earn your belonging here. You already belong. You are created. You are here. You belong to yourself, and you belong because you are. That's it. So the work is to remember that truth, even when the world tries to make us forget or tell a different story. But the good news is that we get to choose the story we tell ourselves. And so this is where the braving framework comes in. The word braving is also an acronym. So Brené explains this as boundaries, reliability, accountability, vulnerability, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. I mean, each of those could be a talk in itself, right? But I just wanted to kind of lay that framework out. And we're just going to touch on a few of those points. But every piece of us invites us, if you think of these words, it invites us to show up with both strength and love. That strong spine and soft front. And in doing this, we must trust ourselves and then be trustworthy for others. By having that integrity and knowing who we are and standing firm in our sacred no or our holy yes. Listening to your body for those clues, because our body is an infinite divine source that kind of can be a guide for us, pointing us in the right direction if we are attuned to it. Which, speaking of that, I just want to give a shout out to Deborah for leading our embodiment workshop yesterday. Thank you, Deborah. Yes. And about 10 of us gathered, and we really did that work around slowing down and just these simple little practices of listening to our body and noticing that connection between body, mind, and spirit. So thank you, Deborah, for bringing that to our community. And it is a needed practice because we have been conditioned to often in this world, this society, lead from our head. Anyone else tend to be in their head a lot? Woo. Thinking, processing, figuring things out all the time, all the ideas, am I saying the right thing? And sometimes movement can allow us to drop in and away from that cluttered mind, get back in touch with our body, listen to our heart, and then be guided to the next right thing to do or be or say. That embodiment practice allows us to trust ourselves again, right? And last week I gave a few tips around and practices around trusting yourself. So just wanted to check in on that as well and see how we're doing with those practices. Are you keeping your word to yourself, even if you didn't share it with anyone else? If you made a commitment of some way to yourself for your health, for how you're choosing to show up in this world, are you honoring that? From the smallest things to the biggest things. We practice by noticing and paying attention. And now I know then this can sometimes lead to a little bit of that self-judgment. Oh, I said I was going to do this and I didn't again. That's not the practice. The practice is around awareness. And then from that place of awareness, we can practice the braving, the N, non-judgment. And that includes for ourselves, right? We often can think of judgment as what we think of other people. But if we were to flip that mirror, hold that mirror up, one of the greatest practices of non-judgment is often with ourselves, yes? Yes. So these practices, these tools that we talk about here, they give us that framework to cultivate the skills of self-awareness, tuning in and listening to our bodies, I lost my spot. Here we go. So now let's talk about the soft front, yes? This is often a place where many of us struggle because once we've got that strong back, it's tempting to allow that strength to then become a barrier, right? Or to armor up and to say, I've been through so much, I'm not letting anyone in again, right? Anyone that has experienced perhaps a heartbreak, a betrayal, trauma, it is easy then for the ego mind to want to go into self-protection mode, and often that looks like armoring up. Be like, I'm not going to let that happen again. But yet, at the same time, we're not open to allowing anything in. So this is where vulnerability comes in. And a reminder that vulnerability is not weakness, it's actually an extremely courageous act. A soft front doesn't mean that we're doormats, right? That's why you kind of have to use all these things together. The vulnerability and the non-judgment, the authenticity, the braving, all of them work together to create this beautiful path. So the soft front doesn't mean that we have to just let people walk all over us. Yet it does mean that we remain open in our hearts and that we're willing to show up and be seen, even if there's no guarantees of how this relationship perhaps will work out. Even if there's no guarantees that if I show myself, will they love, accept, and acknowledge that? Because when we go from that place, we're still looking at the outside in. But we want to show up to the world from the inside, knowing who we are so much, being so willing to show up in our authenticity and to be seen that it doesn't matter the reaction or response from others. We can stand and know who we are and continue to move forward in that vibration of love and wholeness and authenticity. And the more we practice that, then the more we begin to attract those into our field that honor and appreciate that. So when we start to express our weird selves, we don't get looks of anymore. I don't know about y'all, but you start to find your people here that say, yeah, and do that weird thing right back with you. That's what it's all about. Right, Patty? Yeah. I know. I got a few of my little weirdos out there, and I use that word in the best of ways. Yes. Yes. Own your weirdness. That's part of this as well, right? So once we've, gotten to that place of doing the inner work, and not that it's done, it's never done, but doing the work enough to stay open and committed to being in our integrity and trusting ourselves and walking forward in this world, leading with an open heart and love, then that soft front becomes a vibration, a magnet for others. And I know for some of us that sometimes that softness has been unsafe, that we've had to protect ourselves because of trauma or systems of oppression or betrayal. So when we talk about soft fronts, I want us to also be talking about creating safe, brave, courageous spaces like this one where we can be vulnerable and be acknowledged and loved and honored. And by doing that, that is often the exact path we need for healing so that we can build once again that inner strength and courage. Surround ourselves with people who love and accept us just as we are. Find and discover our inner selves again. And then it becomes easier to bring that out into the world in a wider way, right? So I just want to be clear, right? Like, I'm not saying if you have some stuff going on to go, stand in front of a crowd and be like, this is me, hey, and then, you get one or two, and then you're taken right back out. Practice in comfortable, safe, brave spaces like this where people are vulnerable and loving, accepting, and non-judgmental. Yes. This work to hold each other in love and not judgment, that is sacred work. It's deep work, and it takes practice. So now for the wild heart. It's my favorite part, y'all. If you couldn't have guessed. The wild heart is that part of us that allows us to dance in the tension of the both and, that lives in that paradox, to be brave and scared at the same time, to grieve and celebrate at the same time, to be grounded in who we are and yet still open to growth and who we are becoming. It's that part of us that can see injustice in the world and still choose joy. That can mourn the pain of the world and still show up to decorate cupcakes for our kids' birthdays. Because joy is resistance. Joy is a way of being fully expressed. I posted it on social media yesterday or so, a picture of me that I was going through looking for some pictures, and I was at this event, and I was just like, it was just a moment that someone captured of just this pure joy, right? And I was like, noticing, I'm so rarely on Facebook, y'all. I was on it again. I was noticing my feed, right? It was like, and I was like, we need to fill the feed with more joy in this framework of an act of resistance. Not to say, oh, there's so much stuff going on in the world, I don't care, I'm just going to go over here and be carefree and happy. But to say, there's so much going on in the world, and you can't steal my joy, right? So I posted this as an invitation, and I posted mine kind of with a capture of queer joy, right? And I was like, whatever your marginalized self may be, let's fill our feed with pictures of that, right? Queer joy, black joy, Latina joy, autistic joy, whatever it may be. Show the world we belong here. We exist, and not only do we exist, but we are not, the word marginalized, it's sometimes, because it can mean like go over into the margins, like go over here. So I used it in this context because the world has said these folks are marginalized just because one of our aspects of our identity may be in the minority, not the majority. That's all that it is. And so it becomes marginalized on the side. And I'm saying the world needs to see that you may think that we're over here, but we're over here like this. Right? Yes. So that is having that brave, strong spine, and yet open and courageous and joyous expression. Because when we realize the spiritual truth that we are all divine beings, that we are all manifestations of the one Spirit, it is much easier to stand in who we are and to claim our birthright as the divine in action, in form, right? In its many expressions. So this wild heart doesn't need a membership card, although I thought of making some. That might be kind of fun. Anyone want to join my Wild Heart Club? Oh, that's kind of a fun name, right? The Wild Heart Club. That's like a band name. Oh, it kind of is. That's kind of punk, right? The Wild Heart Club. All right. So, I have another idea. Rainbow's going to start a punk band. I think I could just find some good musicians and just kind of right? I don't know. Sorry to sorry to take away from anyone who may be in a punk band to say that it's easy and anyone could do it. I don't want, anyway. Focus, Rainbow. So, all it needs is your sacred yes. You don't need a membership card. You don't need permission. You don't need an invitation, although I'm giving you one right now. All you need to join the Wild Hearts Club or the Wild Hearts Band is your yes to your own authenticity, your yes to belonging to yourself, and your yes to brave the wilderness, not because it's easy, because it's where truth and fulfillment lives. You may carry the weight of past rejections or the cost of standing alone, but remember, you are never alone. You are one with all of life, one with a divine presence, and you are never alone. As Jen Hatmaker said, once you make it out of the wilderness, you find it is not a barren wasteland, but full of artists and prophets and misfits and truth tellers, people who are done shrinking and pretending and performing, people who are done sacrificing their soul at the altar of being liked. Love that. So I know that it's not necessarily an easy path to walk, to brave the wilderness of authenticity, and that once I also, have practiced and seen, once we can shift our perspective to stop looking for the evidence of why we don't belong and stop focusing on the loud messages of you're not welcome here and this is why, or your identity, your expression, your whatever is not right or valid here. Once we stop looking for that evidence, we can come back to our own truth and walk our own path and be that resonant energy for the truth to be reflected back to us, right? Not just whoever happens to have the mic or the platform or the position of power saying whatever. You get to decide. Every time you choose to trust your voice, to honor your values, and show up with love and courage, you are choosing the wilderness. You are choosing that sacred space where true belonging lives. So, I invite you this week to ask yourself, and maybe we can type this in the chat for a little reminder here. Where am I betraying myself in order to belong? Where am I being invited to set a boundary? And I just want to pause and say here, a boundary is really more about what you will do, not the other person, right? So a boundary is like, if you continue to do this, I'm going to walk away, hang up the phone, stop engaging, right? So boundaries sometimes we can think of boundaries as these walls that we put up that require someone else to do something. The boundary, the power, again, lives within us. We can be clear and loving. When you do this, I feel that. If you continue to do this, I will do such and such. Disengage, right? So, where am I being invited to set a boundary? And where can I soften and let myself be seen? And lastly, where's my wild heart calling me to dance? Or to move, as we talked about yesterday. Because sometimes when we think about dance, we think about choreography and performance. And this is not a performance for you all. That was just simply movement that felt fun to do, right? So where is your wild heart calling you to move and to express and to be authentic? Let's keep walking this path together, right? Strong backs, soft fronts, wild hearts, because you belong here just as you are. Well, thank you. Take it into prayer. Y'all, I had to just create a space where I belonged, right? Because by showing up being fully who I am, you start to attract those. And then all of a sudden you're like, look around. You're like, wow, I belong here because I brought my full self. And then others that felt that attraction showed up and be like, I belong here. Right? Because I'm done with fitting in. All right, let's pray. Taking that deep breath. So grateful to recognize the one life that is love, that is freedom, that is creativity. This one life that is expressing in, as, and through all. The divine presence expressing itself through each and every one of us. This divine wholeness expressing itself as all of creation. I know that this is the truth of who I am. This love, this creativity, this freedom is the very essence of my life. It is the very essence of all creation. And it is from this place of oneness and connection that I speak this word now, claiming for each and every person hearing the sound of my voice, for each and every person feeling the vibration that is being vibrated, extended out into the world, that resonance now, for all who are ready to step into this world of strong backs, soft fronts, wild hearts, that I know that the way is made, the path is clear, and that we find each other, those of courageous, loving, wild hearts that are ready to live a life fully, authentically, in integrity, trusting ourselves and each other with our hearts. I know that this is possible. This world where all are honored and cherished and loved. This world where all are valued simply for being that unique divine expression of the one. This world is what I'm calling forth now, in this now moment, knowing that we are creating it each time we say yes to knowing and being ourselves more fully. We are creating this new world each time we step out into the world courageously, bravely, vulnerability at play, to allow ourselves to be seen and to be known for the truth of who we are. That this vibration extends, it expands, it resonates, it ripples out until the predominant energy of the entire planet is one of love, diversity in expression, authenticity. This entire planet is resonating now at this vibration of wholeness. And knowing that we are creating a world where it is safe to be exactly who we are, for we are all honored and loved and cherished for that unique way of being and expressing in this world. Calling forth non-judgment, authenticity, and peace. So I just settle into the vibration of the word that has been spoken now. Allowing it to permeate my entire field, body, mind, spirit. Really feeling the completion of this prayer. That we now live in a world where all are honored and cherished for exactly who we are. And it's with great gratitude now. So grateful for this world that has been created. So grateful for the fulfillment of this prayer that I release it now into the action of the law that always says, yes, my beloved, it is done, and it is so. And together we say, and so it is. Yes.